Let's get down to basics to defeat this cunt. Why did they send me a hack when I asked for talent? This is the saddest film I've ever met, and you can bet before I'm through, somehow I'll make you hate it too. And yes, we're back with the fundamental misunderstanding of Rian Johnson. And in today's video, we are going to discuss something pretty fundamental. You've read the title, you know what we're here to discuss. We are going to do Rian Johnson's fundamental misunderstanding of basic writing principles and plot construction. Because I'm combining two things into one, this video is going to be longer than other videos, even though a lot of the videos are pretty long anyway, because this movie is just so bad. So yeah, this video is probably going to be easily over an hour long. So just settle in. Maybe you're going to want to go about your daily activities and while you're just listening to this instead of, looking at me, because I'm not much to look at. I'm not really all that entertaining, except my sarcasm and my terrible, terrible hand gestures that I constantly use. So you might want to go about your daily activities, run an errand or two while you're listening to this video, because we're going to talk a little bit. So perhaps I should have uploaded this video as one of the first, if not the first video that I introduced the series with, because this fundamental misunderstanding is perhaps one of the most fundamental things that one person, a director, can misunderstand, because you can't write a story if you don't know how to write. And Rian Johnson does not know how to write. In some of my previous videos, especially the last one about the fundamental misunderstanding of strong female characters, I was withholding a lot of information because I felt like adding that into it would actually detract from what I was trying to say. But I realized in retrospect that maybe including some of that information would have actually aided in your understanding of what I was talking about. So now that I'm going to explain this fully in this video, you will be able to understand my qualms with the prior things I spoke about, because it is just so bad. It is just so bad. Rian Johnson cannot write, and that is my opening statement. So yes, he can't write. I have an outline here that is about 6 pages long, because there's just so much to talk about, and I know for a fact I am missing things in this. So just if you see that I'm missing something, I am not like forgetting the thing where I might have to make an actual second video on this, because I know that I wrote all of this in the span of a few days. So some of the things that I spoke about, I know I was going really in depth on that, and maybe I forgot other things. So if I forgot to mention something about his fundamental misunderstanding of basic writing principles or plot construction, you can leave it in the comments, and then I can speak about what you said, because I know because honestly, I'm one person. I'm not going to see every single thing wrong with this movie. So maybe I missed something. Maybe I didn't. Maybe you'll see something new that you didn't notice, and you noticed things that I didn't. And yes, I know I'm wearing a Spock shirt. Today is the 3-year anniversary of Leonard Nimoy's death, so rest in peace, my honorary grandfather. I miss him every day, as I know his family does. So that was another thing, just a little sidetrack. So when you write, okay, before I begin, I'm not gonna, I don't want to use my credentials as something that I would back up my argument with, but really I have no choice here, because a lot of people who claim that they like The Last Jedi and how good it was, they say I'm a lit major, and well, I've triple majored in business, art, and communications, and since the time I was in 3rd grade, I've been told by academics and non-academics alike that I was one of the most talented writers that they have ever had the opportunity to get to know. So, I mean, I'm not saying I have a lot of anxiety in general. As you can tell by me juggling this thing, fake juggling, I have a lot of anxiety, especially about what I work on. I'm a songwriter, a screenwriter, and an author. I find it easier for me to write screenplays than it is for me to write books itself, because books require a lot more information that I deem slightly unnecessary. So in screenplays, you're supposed to take out the unnecessary expositive and sidetracked material out and just leave in what is most crucial to the plot and leave in what is necessary. The whole concept of writing a screenplay is to show, not tell what is going on. And that is something that Rian Johnson doesn't know how to do at all. Just another thing. But we'll talk about that in a bit. So, there are two basic necessities to writing a story. There are a lot of things that should be in a story, but I understand, like, there's a lot of things that should be in a story, but it doesn't always have to be in there. But there are two things that absolutely always have to be in a story. And those two basic necessities are strong characters and a convincing plot. A lot of people who like The Last Jedi apologists, as I call them, can find one or the other in this movie, and to the really untrained eye, they might actually be able to find both. And no, in reality, there are neither in this. And if there are neither strong characters nor a convincing plot in a story, then there is no story. If a fan or a moviegoer has to use their own meta to piece what you wrote together to make sense of your own plot, you did a horrific job presenting your own material. And that, in my opinion, in my experience, not in my opinion, in my experience, the people who try to justify The Last Jedi to me use so much of their own meta to explain to me why Luke acted a certain way, or why Kylo Ren did something, or why Rey did something else, or why this happened. But if they have to do that so I understand it, meanwhile all of their meta is so wildly different, if they have that many different interpretations of what was done and it's not like a uniform opinion about what happened, because what they're saying is opinion, not fact, because they don't know why Rian Johnson did a lot of things he did, just like Rian Johnson doesn't know, just like the people who hate The Last Jedi have no idea why certain things were done. The people who like The Last Jedi are trying to justify this movie with information they are not given in the movie, and they make it up in their own heads, and if it makes sense to them, they'll accept it as unquestioned canon, and that's not how a movie should leave you. If a movie is not self-contained, the movie is, pardon my French, absolute shit. If you as a director leave your audience to make sense of what you wrote, you did a bad job. It is not the audience's burden to make sense of your crap. If we don't understand what exactly you're doing in your movie, the thing is, it's not that we don't understand what you're doing. We understand totally what you're talking about. We understand the whole concept of The Last Jedi. It's about imperfect heroes. We get that. And that's fine, but you have to have a plot. You have to have a reason things happen and why people act a certain way, other than the fact you want to prove that no hero is perfect. That's not how you write. That is a theme. That is a theme or a message that you would have as a side message, not even as the main message or the main point in something. It's having imperfect heroes, which is something we never thought was a thing in Star Wars, for the most part, as the major message and pretty much the only thing that justifies anything in this movie. Is horrible. You did a bad job, and you have to admit that. You did. because fans all over the world who like this movie are justifying your movie with their own meta. That does not make sense half the time. And even sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes when people explain to me their meta, I'm just like, all right, some of it, that makes sense. I could buy that. But it has to be in the movie for me to say that it's canon. It has to be in the movie for me to say that the movie actually makes sense. But the movie is not self-contained. And that makes the movie bad. The movie is shit. The plot is shit. So the plot and story should be evident to all your viewers so that if they have to use their meta, that's really bad and you really shit the bed on that one. So I've already proven in the last video that all of the female characters, since we're talking that two of the basic necessities of a good story or a story in general are strong characters and a convincing plot, we're going to talk about strong characters first because it's important to talk about that and understand exactly where I'm coming from. In the last video, the fundamental misunderstanding of strong female characters, I proved to you that none of those characters were strong. They were all weak. They were so badly written. They were there as a deus ex machina. They were there as a plot device. They were given unrealistic abilities. So many things wrong with the female characters. I'm offended as a woman. And most other women see this movie and they should be offended themselves because they didn't write a woman for you to relate to. They didn't write a real human woman. They wrote a goddess that you cannot look up to because you can never become like her because it's really hard for me to say that. You cannot look up to these people these women they wrote in that last movie because they are unrealistic expectations of what a woman should be. They are not what women are. And that is disgusting. You write a strong female character by making her someone that women can relate to and aspire to be. They have their faults, they mourn, they fail. That's what they should be doing in the movie to prove that they are strong female characters. But they didn't. So now we're going to briefly just do a little dissertation on this. There are two different things: to be weak in character and to be a weak character. Were the men treated the same way as women? Yes. All of the men in this movie were horribly written as well. To be weak in character is a character trait which one can overcome. It's something like not being dedicated to a cause they need to be dedicated to, or being ambivalent on a lot of topics. It's something like that. But to be a weak character is entirely the fault of the writer and cannot be overcome because they are only a certain way for a certain reason, not because that's who they really are. They are written badly. That's what it means to be a weak character. To be weak in character is something that can be overcome. It's part of a protagonist's story sometimes, and that's important for people to know. So yes, the men were all written just as badly as the women. But I still say it's more offensive how they wrote the women than it is to how they wrote the men. Except for Luke Skywalker. That's definitely something different. So, Luke Skywalker was completely out of character. He was nothing but a plot device. He was written abysmally. Because the plot necessitated that Luke be a certain way in The Last Jedi with no precedence nor justification, proves that Luke Skywalker was written as a weak character. And that's really bad because he was never set up to be that way. Now, is he the only one? Absolutely not. We're going to talk about every single one of the other male characters in this movie. And that's important that we do. So, Poe. Now, Poe didn't really have much screen time in The Last Jedi, except for the very beginning when he was being completely out of character and decided to completely ignore General Leia Organa's orders. But nowhere in The Force Awakens was his allegiance, loyalty, or cockiness an issue. So that he was set up to basically just ignore Leia and be a little shit to Haldo. All that is completely out of character. And also in the comic books that are based around Poe Dameron, he learned the exact same message, the exact same lesson that he did in The Last Jedi. I don't understand why, because it was never set up in The Force Awakens that he was a hot-headed flyboy, but still, it was done already. You don't put it as a major, character arc, which didn't exist for Poe nor any of the other characters in this movie. Just saying. Shh, don't let Ryan know. He already knows. So, I don't know why that exists in the comic books, but since it was already done, you can't make him learn the same lesson again. It does not make sense for that to happen. So, Poe Dameron, he was there to initiate Canto Bight and little else. He was of very little consequence in The Last Jedi altogether because he was so out of character, and that was a disservice to his character. He was barely written, and when he was written badly. And that's really sad because he had a lot of potential and I wanted to, be able to, grow closer to him. Sorry, I play with my hair a lot when I have anxiety. And this movie gives me a lot of anxiety. So now, Finn. And I know, we were all kind of waiting for me to talk about Finn because, well, there's a lot of things regarding Finn we need to talk about. Like Poe, he was sidelined from the entire movie. But his arc with Rose actually handicapped the Resistance. And I find it really funny how Rian decided to have the black man, the Asian woman, and the Latino man all work together to undercut the Resistance's progress. I find that really funny and offensive that isn't it really funny that the people of color were the ones that really undercut the Resistance? I find that really funny, don't you? Not saying anything, but I find it really coincidental. So, Finn's character growth in this movie was completely ignored and therefore decimated. The second movie in a protagonist's story is arguably is the most important because that's where they're supposed to learn all of their lessons, and they have a lot of their character growth, and that's where they fail a lot. And yeah, they failed a lot in this movie, but that still doesn't mean that they grew at all as characters because they didn't. It's really important for a character to grow and for us to learn and bond with a character more and more in the second act, because going into the third act, even in a one movie thing, I'm saying, the first stage is getting to know a character, is becoming acquainted with the character. The second act is getting to know the character and caring about them. And then the third act is basically being fully invested in the character. And that's the audience's journey in a movie. Now, it's also the journey in a trilogy. The trilogy, the first movie, we're sort of getting to know the character toward the end, and then we're getting to know the character more and more and seeing more of the facets of their personality in the second one. And then the third one, we love this character and we really have a vested interest, and we really had to have a vested interest in Finn by the middle of the second movie. And I know a lot of us did in the first movie, but that was destroyed because Finn's character growth was completely decimated and ignored in this movie. So really, he's not really even a protagonist anymore, is he? It's a thought. He was introduced in this movie as comic relief, and it was poorly done. He wakes up from this coma literally I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe as much as 6 hours, after literally being sliced up the spine by Kylo Ren's lightsaber. He wakes up maximum of 6 hours later, and he's totally fine. The first thing he does is fall out of bed wearing a wetsuit. You want me to think that's funny? That's not funny. That's ridiculous. He was injured so badly, he fell into a coma. So he was forced to learn a lesson that there was no need for him to have learned. The only thing that actually worked in Finn's favor in this movie was that he voluntarily pledged himself to the Resistance. But even that could have been done better, because it should not have come about as like from the whole Canto Bite thing, because Canto Bite should never have happened in this movie. There was no reason for it. But that's a whole nother thing that I've probably already spoken about, but I decided to, you know, throw it in there again because it's something that a lot of people don't understand. Canto Bite was a waste of time. So now I can't just talk about the good guys. Now, can I? I have to talk about the bad guys. We're going to talk about Hux because, wow, a lot of people seem to be really upset about what happened to Hux in this movie, and I wonder why. Because, I don't know, maybe in The Force Awakens, we actually sort of, as much as we hate him, we, like, hate his guts, you kind of like him because he's really intimidating, and he's pretty powerful, and he's not a Force user, so you're like, wow, he's a really interesting character, because he's actually frightening, because he's clearly a Nazi, but it's just like, he's a really good character. He had a lot of potential for character growth. Honestly, he was more intimidating than Kylo Ren. And I could see him leading the First Order way better than Kylo ever could. And honestly, I was kind of hoping for that, but I knew that it wasn't really gonna happen. It had a lot of potential, and Hux's character had a lot of potential for that. So Hux, what actually happened to him? He was devalued to just be comic relief. He is no longer frightening nor intimidating. He was actually so useless in The Last Jedi. You can't even call him a plot device, because he was just there to be there, and he was there as a punching bag for Snoke and Kylo Ren, and that is horrible for his character. He had so much more potential than that, and I was hoping to see her, you know, grow and be stronger. The only part of Hux's story in this movie that I actually liked was when he almost shot Kylo Ren, and apparently every single day I learned that the only parts of this movie that I actually liked were not written by Rian Johnson. That part of the movie, Domhnall Gleeson, he wrote it. He suggested it. And I'm like, that's good. That's good. Wonderful. Okay, so now, Snoke. A lot of people are upset about Snoke. A lot of people, rightfully so. Because Snoke, he was set up to be this huge baddie, the biggest baddie. He was basically set up to be the Emperor, but probably even worse, because like we don't know where he came from, we don't know how he came to be, we don't know how he came to lead the First Order, we don't know nothing about this character, all right? But we were basically bamboozled into believing we would find out anything about him, and we found nothing, and he is a meaningless, insignificant character. He literally had one purpose in the entire arc now, because he's dead. He had one purpose, and that was to turn Kylo Ren to the dark side. So now that he served his purpose, he was murdered unceremoniously with no emotional impact, and he is literally the textbook definition of a plot device, and that's really sad. Because Snoke had a lot of potential too. He did. Could have been really cool. Wouldn't it have been really cool if he was Darth Plagueis, or, you know, the reincarnation of Darth Sidious, or, geez, I don't know. Geez, I don't know anyone else, but literally no one we know, or literally anyone else, but, nobody in general. Would have been really cool to know at least something about his character before, you know, he was, but, you know, you can't have everything you want, and according to Rian, you can't have anything you want. So, now Kylo Ren, before I continue, I know this is already really long. Before I talk about Kylo Ren, I am going to come out of the proverbial closet. Yeah, I guess, I don't really like using that, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I can't think of anything else, because really it's hard to admit this, but I am a Kylo Ren fan. I was, after my second or third viewing of The Force Awakens. The first time I saw the movie, I absolutely hated his character. He was weak, he was useless, his arc is clearly shown. But then I saw that there was a lot of potential for his character. And I'm just like, wow, I'm in it because of his potential to be a really strong Force user, and to basically turn, because there was no other way for him to go in my head. But, you know, I could have seen him going darker and then coming back to the light, but I'm going to make an entirely separate video on Kylo Ren alone, and that's going to probably be called Rian Johnson's Fundamental Misunderstanding of Villain Development, and that's something that I'm probably going to talk about Kylo Ren and Snoke, I would think, because Snoke is something we have to continue to talk about, because he's, yeah. So, Rian wanted us to believe that Kylo Ren is torn, but managed to undercut his torn soul by making him less relatable to the audience, because he literally threw aside his possibility for redemption and just manipulated Rey instead. And you want me to think that he's torn after doing that? I don't think so, my son. There's no way. He had no development in this movie whatsoever. He began this story exactly the way he ended it, except now he's a little dark shit or some shit like that. Like, I don't even understand why people say that he had any character development in this, because the only thing that changed is now he's a little darker, and he's now Supreme Leader. And I was actually saying, how terrible would it be if he demanded that Hux call him Supreme Leader Solo? And I'm like, I'd kill myself, really. That's horrible. But, you know, so he was written badly for the most part. Like, you kind of, your job is to make people care about characters, but you made him less relatable by giving him no significant backstory whatsoever. We were hoping to find out why Kylo Ren turned to the dark side, and we didn't, because we as fans know Luke Skywalker would not have, in any universe you can possibly imagine, he would have ever tried to kill his nephew. And so we don't buy that as canon. We don't buy that as the truth, because it does not make sense. And I don't accept that. I reject that, just like a lot of other people do. So you have to give us something better, and I expect something better in 9, because you didn't give me a reason why he turned to the dark side, and that was really important to tell us in the second episode in his trilogy. Well, in his trilogy, because that's what Rian made it. Anyway, yeah, so why did he turn to the dark side? We still don't really know. I willfully reject what Rian said, because it's wrong for the narrative and for the character, and he doesn't know what he's doing. But so you have to give us something more. You didn't let the audience like bond or understand him at any point in this movie, because like he was asked by Rey, why did you hate your father? And he says, I didn't hate my father. And then it's done. Why did he kill him? Then we still don't know. But whatever. So he was perhaps the only character that was not written abysmally, but he still was written terribly and done such a disservice by Rian Johnson. Yet he was the only character that Rian cared about, which is crazy to think that you can't even write the only character you care about. Really, guys? Really, Rian? So some of the new characters he tried to introduce to us failed because Rian chose to lower the characters we already knew to the level of the new characters. And that's really bad, because you can't do that when you're introducing new characters. You have to raise them up above. You have to raise them to the level of the existing characters, so that we're able to, you know, tolerate them, understand them, and care about them, because it's your job to make us, the audience, care about the characters. And he didn't do that with any of the new characters, namely Haldo or Rose. And that's his fault and his wrong, just like everything else. So now we're going to talk about the plot itself. And my opening statement is, what plot? Anybody? So I remember it was, I think, 5 or 6 days after I had seen The Last Jedi the first time, and I actually saw it a second time because I thought I was being too harsh on the movie. But then I realized I wasn't being too harsh. I wasn't being harsh enough. So it was about 5 or 6 days after I had seen The Last Jedi, and I saw my friend at work who I was talking about The Last Jedi with, and he came up to me at work and he says, The Last Jedi is such a great movie. And I'm just like, it is the sorriest excuse for a Star Wars movie I have ever seen. And he says, what, are you crazy? And I just put what I was doing down. I looked him straight in the eye and I said, what was the plot? And then he looked at me, deer in the headlights, literally stopped breathing for a second. And he says, oh my God, you're right. And I'm just like, yes, I am right. Never say that to me ever again. Because there was no plot in this movie. Well, there was, but not a convincing one. You know, the very thing I said was necessary for a story? I don't know. The plot was nothing. The Resistance was running out of fuel and the First Order could suddenly track through hyperspace, which, by the way, is in fact said to be impossible in the novelization of The Force Awakens. So, and it also completely changes the landscape of the Star Wars universe, that now people can suddenly track through light speed or hyperspace or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. It's the same difference. So that was the plot. The Resistance was running out of fuel and the First Order could track through hyperspace, so they couldn't, do anything. They were sitting ducks. They were just running for their lives. So what's unrealistic about that? Literally everything. Okay, so here's what we have to understand about how the plot was constructed poorly, because it was. So I told you what the plot is. We understand that it's bad. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, is never was fuel a major issue or plot point in the Star Wars universe, so why now? It had no payoff whatsoever. Watching the First Order slow-mo chase the Resistance cruisers had me bored to tears. You're supposed to make us want to see more and want to, continue the story, but I was fucking bored to tears while watching this friggin' shit. There was actually, you know how I keep saying, sorry. You know how I keep saying how I hate Canto Bight and I don't think it should have happened and I think we should just ignore it all entirely? Because I think it could have been avoided had anything logical happened based on who the characters were, that the plan was divulged or someone said something in general. I think that Canto Bight could have been avoided, but when they cut to Canto Bight from the major plot that should be really pressing on the audience's minds, I completely forgot, the first and second time I was watching this movie, by the way, that the First Order was chasing the Resistance cruisers, because it was that forgettable. It was that immemorable that I can forget what the major plot is and forget what's going on when we go to something that I hate and think is completely unnecessary. That's really bad. And I know I'm not the only one who felt that way. We just felt it was a time filler, that it was just there to be there. The main plot should not be able to be completely or easily mostly forgotten, and no one is interested in the major plot because the whole fuel thing was never an issue before, so there's no precedence for this ever being an issue in the universe, but now it is. And also, when you're watching it all happen, I know this is embarrassing to admit, but when I was watching it and we were watching the whole, chase going on for a while now, I was getting so bored. I just said, why doesn't Snoke or Hux or someone just take the supremacy or a dreadnought or whatever, have a few TIE fighters on either side constantly bombarding the Resistance cruiser, just take down their shields and, top the Resistance cruiser and literally take over the ship. It's not that hard to do. Now, that would be crazy, because that's crazy. I was rooting for the Resistance to fail because I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for something at all to happen when nothing at all happened in this movie. I was just waiting for something to happen so, like basically needing, I was needing something to happen so badly that I wanted the resistance to fail. Briefly, I wanted the resistance to fail because I'm just like, at least something would happen then. And you know how, oh, and Canto Bite, which we have to talk about briefly. Canto Bite was just a failure on top of failure. Like, Poe and Haldo have this disagreement. She doesn't tell him anything. Why? We don't know. Literally, we never get an answer about why Haldo never told Poe the plan. We don't get an answer why Poe reacted the way he did because it's out of character. We don't get an answer as to why Finn and Rose, who literally hated each other for like 2 seconds, decide to work together and then get Poe involved, and then everyone just, you know, decides, let's find a code breaker, and then they contact Maz. So they contact Maz, and then they, under bad circumstances, under basically, let's say a failure of circumstances, they decide to do this side quest, Canto Bite, where they go to find a code breaker, don't find the guy, find another guy who betrays them, and then literally handicaps the resistance, and the whole thing handicaps the resistance, and it's just like, it's just a failure. We understand that this movie is about failure and imperfect heroes, but we can't constantly see our favorites fail, especially when there's no good precedence and no reason for them to have failed in the first place. So I don't know what the hell that is. In every Star Wars movie, you find yourself thinking, how's the resistance gonna get out of this one? And when Canto Bite fails, you're just like, there's no fucking way the resistance can get out of this one unless they pull some bullshit out of the sky. Like, literally, Jesus Christ himself comes down and is, you know, let's say force Jesus Christ, Anakin Skywalker comes down. There is no reason the resistance should have survived this whole situation because they were, pardon my French again, fucked beyond belief. They were screwed. There was nothing they really could have done. Crate was destroyed. The whole plan on Crate was great. Like, that would have been great if somebody told Poe the plan so that they didn't so that Rose and Finn and DJ didn't inadvertently handicap the Resistance's plan. Would have been great if somebody, you know, told them that so everyone would be on the same page, because it would make sense logically to tell everyone the plan, considering there's less than 400 people left in the Resistance. Jesus, I don't understand. So now we're looking for something, some way the Resistance is going to get out of this. And the whole thing is, and the whole thing that it comes down to, you know how it's usually supported by the entirety of the plot? How, you know, Luke Skywalker comes back and duels Darth Vader, and it actually fails. But the reveal that Vader was his father really made Vader kind of, you know, meh. And Luke ended up getting away, giving the Resistance a new hope. And that's something really important. In A New Hope, there is one port that they can send this, they can fire through that would actually, you know, destroy the Death Star. And they send out tons of people because they don't know who's going to be able to do it. Luke's one of those people, so of course he's going to be able to do it. But eventually all the X-Wings are taken down except for Luke, and he's left there alone, and his father's flying behind him, guarded by 2 other X-Wings. Sorry, not X-Wings, TIE fighters. And then you're wondering, how the hell is Luke going to be able to do this? He's going to be blown up. And then Han comes in the Millennium Falcon and, you know, knocks them all out. And that's how it wins. It makes sense why that happened, because Luke and Leia had faith in Han for coming back, mostly Luke. And he did. Everything made sense. The way the Resistance got out of those situations made sense and was actually supported by the characterization and supported by the arc they went through in that movie. But the only thing that actually got the Resistance out of this whole thing is that the end has to, before I say this, the ending has to make sense and be character driven. But in The Last Jedi, what caused the Resistance to, you know, succeed? Mildly. It was that Luke's Force astral projection distracted Kylo Ren. That's what this comes down to. This entire badly written story comes down to badly written end. And you know, it's not that surprising that it's badly written end because it was a badly written story, but it comes down to a distraction that Luke, the forced astral projection of Luke, distracts Kylo Ren. Yeah, I mean, it definitely somewhat illustrated Kylo's weakness and arrogance, and that's great, wonderful, because we know that he's weak, really weak. But did we not already know that? And you don't even have Luke ceremoniously come back and face his nephew. He's a coward, and he forced astral projects across the galaxy. And now, everything else, all of that being said, we've discussed how the major issue was that there was a fuel shortage in the Resistance, but it's really hard to, you know, make that make sense when Starkiller Base was destroyed hours before the beginning of The Last Jedi. The First Order should be much more vulnerable than they are at the beginning of The Last Jedi. The Resistance had a major victory and everything, but they also had basically their main support source destroyed. But with how big the explosion on Starkiller was, how many people they, you know, would think they lost, like thousands. Kylo was disfigured and injured. All the projects they had going on, the Starkiller itself was destroyed. Their major project that they've been working on is gone, and they lost a lot of people. It should take a while for them to recover from that, and I don't understand why they're so powerful and can suddenly track through hyperspace, and the Resistance is on its last legs, and all of this stuff just happened because Rian said it should happen, and that's wrong. That's not how you write. It has to make sense. The plot has to make sense. Say it with me, guys. Say it with me. The plot must make sense. And it doesn't. It does not. Now, aside from the plot itself being badly written and everything else going wrong and just being horrible in general, there are billions of plot holes. Billions. Now, I can't say that in everything I've ever written there was never a plot hole or two. You're never going to have a perfectly written thing. That's just not how this works. You're always going to sacrifice one thing for another. Sometimes in writing, it doesn't work out right. But when you have more plot holes than you actually have plot in your movie or your story, you suck, my dude. You really suck. Now, I wrote a list of over a dozen plot holes that I wrote about at 10 to 4 in the morning when I was literally up for 28 hours. And I was literally falling asleep while writing this list. But I wrote over a dozen plot holes that exist in The Last Jedi. And I was able to think about that under those circumstances that I just explained. And that is horrible. That someone who's literally drunk on lack of sleep can find all these plot holes is really, really bad. So, we're going to talk first about the Blue Skywalker Legacy lightsaber. Where the hell did it come from, and when was the last time Luke Skywalker actually saw it? Because here's the thing. In The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren lays claim to the lightsaber because we don't actually understand why until we just think it's because he's obsessed with his grandfather and that was Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. But we actually find out in The Last Jedi that he actually had the lightsaber and was training with the lightsaber at Luke's academy. And you're just like, okay, so it was legitimately his at one point. That's why he lays claim to it. It's not just some fanboy weird, soul claim or whatever. You're just like, oh, he actually owned it. But when Rey hands Luke the lightsaber and he says, where did you get this? He looks like he hasn't seen this thing in years. And when I say years, I mean like decades. Like, he's just like, where the hell did you get this? And it's the truth. It's the truth. Where did Ray get this? We don't know. She got it from Maz. We know that much. But she says she's had it locked away for years. So that implies a long time, like over like a decade or more. So we're wondering where did Maz get the lightsaber from? Because if Kylo had it beforehand, when and where did he lose the lightsaber? Because it was in the Force flashback, it showed Kylo Ren with the blue lightsaber. So I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. When was the last time Luke saw the lightsaber? And why did it mean nothing to him? Was it Kylo's? Was it not Kylo's? Where did he see it last? We don't know. We don't know. And I don't think Rian knows either. Because he didn't watch The Last Jedi. He didn't watch The Force Awakens before writing The Last Jedi. And that is true. That is a fact. Look it up. So, now, the second plot hole is Rey's parentage. We know for a fact she can't be a nobody because it's unsupported by the marketing of this movie. It is unsupported by The Force Awakens, and it is unsupported by prior canon. It is literally unsupported by its own movie as well. Because you know how, here's the thing. I have to put my hair up. I'm really hot. All of a sudden, I'm getting mad, so I gotta put my hair up. So, in The Force Awakens, you know how she's having a Force flashback of this ship flying off into space, basically off of Jakku, and she's just like, wait, come back. Yeah, you're led to believe that those people are her parents. So how, I beg of you, how did her drunk junk trader parents sell their daughter for drinking money when nowhere in The Force Awakens was it ever established that Rey was a slave, which she wasn't, because she actually says in the novelization of The Force Awakens that I am an independent operator, a scavenger in the Meadowlands, beholden to no one and free of debt. That is literally what she says when somebody asks if she is a slave. And it's just like, I don't understand how they can basically how Kylo can reveal this information to her when it contradicts the text canon and contradicts the last movie, unless it's not true. And a lot of people are under the impression, I actually did a survey in an app where 95% of the people who took the survey actually liked The Last Jedi, 95, and 72% of people said that they were expressly dissatisfied or did not believe what Kylo Ren said her parents were, because we don't believe it. It doesn't make sense. It's unsupported by its own movie and by prior canon. So her parentage is a complete and utter lie. And if it's not a lie, then it's wrong, and Rian Johnson just sucks even more than you thought. So yeah, there's that too. Now, Rey suddenly knowing about Vader. I know I called her Mary Sue in the last video, and she really is at this point, which is sad because I love Rey. I loved TFA Rey, but she knows about Vader and what happened to him. How he was redeemed and his son's Luke Skywalker and stuff like that, and that's wonderful and beautiful. But how did she find out about it when it's canon, according to, I think it was either the Before the Awakening novelization or the Force Awakens novelization. I think it was Before the Awakening, though. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was that one. Might have been Bloodlines. It was one of the 3 books they wrote that are either The Force Awakens or Before The Force Awakens. So it was one of those 3 books. I don't remember which one it was because I'm not like up to date on all that stuff. But it's canon, in Disney canon, that the only 3 people who know about what happened at the end of Return of the Jedi was Luke, Leia, and Han. Those are the only 3 people. So the only people who could have actually told her what happened were these 3 people. And suddenly she knows, and Leia didn't tell her, and Han didn't have a chance, and Luke is being a dick to her. So none of the 3 people who actually know told her. So is she just a god and she knows everything? She's god of the machine, Deus Ex Machina. Okay, now Canto Bight. I know I say everything about Canto Bight is wrong, and it is, because this whole movie takes place within the span of 18 to 24 hours, okay? So, Canto Bight. How the hell did these people... Sorry, one moment. Sorry about that, I had a phone call. Where was I? Okay, so oh yeah, that's right. Canto Bight took the whole entirety of The Last Jedi, took place within the span of 18 to 24 hours. Sorry, I thought I was just getting another phone call. So 18 to 24 hours. Wasn't there a huge issue where when Maz told Poe that this code breaker would be found on Canto Bight, and Poe's just like, we can't get there in time, we need someone closer, is there anyone else who could do this, do you think one of us could do it? And she's like, no, this is the only person I know. And so suddenly, now that this is the only person who can do it, and she doesn't think anyone else can do it, they just can suddenly get to Canto Bight in time and get back. You expect me to believe that in less than 12 hours, because there had to have been some time on both sides of this, and this whole thing took place within 18 to 24 hours. They had to have gone to Canto Bight, looked in the casino, had this whole excursion with freeing the, like, llama people or whatever the hell, the llamas. Doesn't matter what they are. Horse llamas, who cares? Freeing them, interacting with the child slaves, finding this other code breaker who would then betray them later, doing all of that, and then after all of this, and then flying all the way back. You expect me to believe that that would only take 12 hours? Yeah, no, that's not how this works. That's not how time works, unless suddenly now the X-Wings and these ships can time travel, like, out of nowhere. Like, no, that's not right. You're wrong. You're wrong again. Okay. Now, this is just something that always bothered me. It didn't really bother me until I was writing this list at, like, 4 in the morning. I wrote all of these in less than 10 minutes, by the way. In less than 10 minutes. So, how did the Resistance cruisers not run out of fuel while refueling the transports? If fuel was really that low and they couldn't really go anywhere or go fast anywhere, how the hell did they refuel all these transports and still have time and fuel to power the big cruiser? No way that could have happened. Doesn't make sense. So Luke also left a map for people to find him, but when they did, he told them to go away. Not only is that not something Luke Skywalker would have done in general, it also doesn't make sense. Why would he have left a map with R2-D2 and Lorsan Tekka and then say, why do you think I came to one of the most unfindable places in the universe? I don't want to be found. I came here to die. Leave me alone. Go away. It's not something Luke Skywalker would have done, nor does it make any sense, because the whole thing in The Force Awakens was we find the map to Luke Skywalker to bring him back. So his return was anticlimactic as well, which is sad. Very sad. Something is really in my throat right now. So the hyperspace ramming we already spoke about, I think. No, we did. We spoke about the tracking, which is also another plot hole. Yeah, we already spoke about the tracking, so we already talked about that one. We know how that's a plot hole. You can't do it. According to the novelizations, you can't do it. So it's actually canon. Let's talk about the hyperspace tracking just really quick. It's canon. You can only track people through hyperspace if there's an active tracker on their vessel while they're in hyperspace, and you can only track them once they get out of hyperspace. I just heard my dog. Sorry. Okay, now the hyperspace ramming. You cannot weaponize light speed. That's not how these things work. You can't just do things because, well, it's convenient at the time. This changes the entire landscape of the Star Wars universe. They're humans. Most of them are humans or humanoid people. And the Jedi and most of the people in the Resistance are actually humans. So you expect me to believe that nobody at any point in time throughout their history would have thought about kamikaze runs? That's one of the most basic things we do in, like, some, like, groups do when they're being terrorists, pretty much. Pardon my French. Don't blacklist me. Don't get at me, FBI. We're fine. I'm not one. So you think that no one would have ever thought about kamikaze runs at all? They're humans. Of course they would have. There is probably something there. So now this thing Haldo just thought of is a kamikaze run, and now you can weaponize light speed. Not how this works. Sorry, did not mean to do that. That was my bad. Forgive me. Forgive me. That wasn't at you guys. That wasn't really at anyone. that was actually my finger slipping. Did not mean to do that. Sorry. So, also, they really overused the Deus Ex Machina whole thing in this movie, because where did that Death Star-esque cannon come from? You know, the one that they, the First Order just brings on Crate after their whole thing is destroyed. By the way, how did they even get there in the first place if their whole fleet was destroyed? What the hell? Don't know that. That's actually another plot hole, I guess you could say. So yeah, that happened. That happened. Where did the Death Star cannon come from? Where did it come from? We don't know. It's like, it's never at all mentioned throughout this entire movie, because, the First Order is not aware that they're going to Crate until, like, I don't know, 5 minutes before this cannon shows up. So there was never a mention of this cannon because it wasn't necessary. But as soon as it was necessary to add conflict after the major conflict was over and the Resistance is on Crate, there has to be another conflict. So they bring up, every movie has to have a Death Star, right? So they bring the Death Star freaking cannon down after their fleet is destroyed. And, well, now it's here. And the Resistance is once again vulnerable. Where did it come from? When was it built? How was it built? In the last, 18 hours? It's not like they had time to prepare. Where did it come from? That really infuriates me. The Death Star cannon did not come from anywhere, and they should not have had time to build it in 18 hours. How can you justify this? How? Explain. We're waiting. Okay. We already discussed that the First Order is uber powerful and the Resistance is really weak, and that's a huge logical fallacy. Kylo and Rey's Force bond has no justification whatsoever. I know Snoke took, credit for it, but he's not powerful enough. He's not powerful enough to be able to do that because of the next thing I'm going to talk about, and that I've actually talked about in the last video. So really, he couldn't have done that. He could not have, linked their minds. And if he really did link their minds, why was the Force bond still active after he died? So, don't know how that worked. Don't know. So did Snoke cause it, or did Snoke not cause it? And if Snoke did not cause it, they're not in love. So what happened? It's like Kylo and Rey, there's no way they can ever fall in love and have it make any sense narratively. So where did it come from? We don't know. Where did it come from, Cotton Eye Joe? There's a lot of things I'm asking with that song that's accurate. So Snoke not being able to sense Kylo Ren's betrayal in the same room, 20 feet away, yet he can bridge minds across the galaxy? No, huge logical fallacy, doesn't make sense, gigantic plot hole. Finn was comatose after his injury in The Force Awakens, yet he's totally just fine after 6 hours maybe? He's literally comatose. He falls instantly into a coma when Kylo Ren cuts up his spine, but yet he's fine. And there's never a mention of his whole injury. And that's a complete disservice to his character. Also doesn't make sense, but yet we harp on Kylo Ren's facial scar, and it's just Finn almost died. But he's fine, literally less than 2 to 6 hours later. And you're just what? He was in a coma. He instantly fell into a coma. Okay, so that's done. There's gravity in space now? Why? I'm asking this. If the Resistance could just drop bombs out of the sky onto the top of the Dreadnought, why didn't the First Order drop bombs onto the top of the Resistance cruiser, considering it worked? And also, how did Leia get sucked out into space and just fly there if gravity in space apparently exists in this universe where they can drop bombs? Don't know how that makes any sense. Huge logical fallacy, major plot hole, don't know what you're doing there. And also, another one, you know how in The Force Awakens, Snoke has this one thing where he tells Hux, bring Kylo Ren to me, it's time to complete his training. Where in The Last Jedi did he complete his training? Did he manage to complete his training in a couple of hours in between the end of The Force Awakens and the end of The Last Jedi? Did he manage to complete his training at all there? I mean, was murdering Snoke the completion of his training? Because if it was, why was Snoke complicit in his own murder? Don't understand where that came from either. So Kylo never completed his training, but yet he's somehow more advanced and more dark in this movie. He did nothing. He had no time to complete his training. Don't know where that's coming from. Jesus, this movie gets worse the more you think about it. And also, why did Luke Skywalker die? He didn't have to die. No one physically hurt him. Yeah, he reconnected with the Force after a long time and really stretched all the way across the galaxy. And that might have actually, you know, overexerted him, but you can't die from overexertion in that way. Like, would you be mentally exhausted? Absolutely, but you can't just physically die, up and die. That's not how this works. And apparently, Rian Johnson also himself went into a book, and he's just like, he cited that Jedi can do this, and I'm like, well, then why did Luke Skywalker die? He didn't have to die. He could have easily survived that. You're a freaking idiot. He can't die if Jedi can do this. He's the most powerful Jedi ever, next to his father. And you expect me to think that he died just from this? No, does not make sense. You're wrong again, Ryan. You're wrong again. Okay, so now, the plot is supposed to be character-driven, right? That's how you write. The plot is not just supposed to happen because it happens. It doesn't just fall out of the clear blue sky. The plot is supposed to be character-driven. It is supposed to come about as anyone in any screenwriting class, which I have taken, by the way. The plot is supposed to come about by things characters do and fail to do. But this plot just happened. Regardless of what the characters would have done, regardless of what they did do, things just happened to these characters and they just responded to it. And that's really bad. Now, this is exactly what I wrote, and I want to read it directly to you. Plot is supposed to be character driven, but The Last Jedi was just the plot driving the characters to inexplicably do things most of them would not have done had the plot not necessitated it of them. So it's really bad that none of these characters would have done what the plot needed them to do if the characters were in character, and that's really sad. That's really sad, really bad, crap writing. You suck. I'm getting madder and madder. Can you tell? So as soon as the characters respond to these situations, the whole concept dies. Let me give you the biggest situation, the biggest glaring example of that. Sorry, this is already over an hour. The biggest glaring example of that in The Last Jedi. You know how it's supposed to be emotionally intense, but it's not. Kylo says, your parents were nobody. They died in the sands of Jakku. They're buried in paupers' graves, whatever. And you're nobody, but you're not nothing to me. And Rey is crying for 2 seconds, and then literally 2 minutes later, she's flying the Millennium Falcon, laughing in the gunner's seat, saying, I like this. She's totally fine. That information didn't bother her at all. That is, if Rian Johnson said that she had some preconceived notion about who her parents were, not that she really did, she didn't. She canonically does not know who her parents are. So she suddenly is completely 100% unfazed by the information that her parents are nothing and that they're dead. The people who have caused her this much pain are dead. You expect this child who feels abandoned, who literally had to raise herself in a very harsh environment, would not feel more than that regarding this information? No, of course she would have. Huge logical fallacy. As soon as these characters respond to the situation for the brief time it needs to be responded to, the whole concept dies. Responses have to have consequences, and the situation given to them has to have consequences, and the consequences should be in form of responses. It's a huge circle. It's a huge circle that Rian Johnson doesn't understand. You can't just have one thing and then it goes straight to another. That's not how this works. Not how this works. The plot was written badly because there was no plot to begin with. He just went along with whatever he decided to do. So if the responses have no consequences and the concept itself dies, what was the purpose of including this information in the narrative in the first place? Because as I said at the beginning, when you're writing a screenplay, when you're a screenwriter, you're supposed to take out everything that's unimportant. And if what you wrote hinders the plot or has no effect on the plot or has no effect on these characters, which it didn't, a lot of the things in this movie did not, you're supposed to take it out because it's not necessary. It's unnecessary to the plot. It's unnecessary to the narrative. It's unnecessary to everything. But yet he kept it in there, and it doesn't need to to be in there. This movie was literally a story about nothing happening to people we don't care about because they're not even the characters we were introduced to in the last movie or in the movies prior to that. Nothing should have happened. So what was the point of including it in the first place? Because the plot necessitated it of it. If the situation and response, then the situation and the responses themselves become completely useless, time wasters, and unimportant. And because the plot was shit from its inception, it actually, because of how the characters responded to the plot, it actually made the plot less believable and the characters even weaker. Why? This is exactly what I wrote. Through the lack of connection the characters had with the issues just arbitrarily thrust upon them, it proved that they had no authentic motivation nor emotion, and that the plot itself was insignificant to them. The plot has to be serious to these people. That's how this works. The plot has to be serious. The plot has to be something that they partially caused, or that the universe is actually, it's happening. And they have to work to change it, or they have to work to fight against it. It's not, you can't just have things happen that don't have any precedence nor make any sense, and then have these characters arbitrarily, out of characterly, I guess, respond to these situations and then basically forget it happened, which is what The Last Jedi did to all of these characters. Now, since this movie was an objective ripoff of The Empire Strikes Back, mixed in with some Return of the Jedi things and also some Rebels things that he tried to hide, when people say this movie is, like, you know, original, I kind of lose, like, 10 years of my life. And it's like, I don't understand how people can think this is original when he bastardized The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But since he's trying more for The Empire Strikes Back, let's rag on him. Let's do it. Let us do it. In The Empire Strikes Back, each character has intrinsic motivation. Leia is the princess of Alderaan, and Alderaan was destroyed. So partially she wants vengeance, but mostly she's a politician and she wants justice for the galaxy, and she wants to preserve the, you know, liberty in the universe, and she wants to preserve the resistance, and that is her intrinsic motivation. That is who she is. It is based off of who her character is and what the universe and what liberty means to her, and that's important. She also had friends. She also had friends in the Resistance, but she was a strong female character, the one that you love. Yes, I'm thinking of Air Supply right now, and that's really funny. Han, what was his intrinsic motivation in The Empire Strikes Back and basically the whole original trilogy? He, being involved with the Resistance, kind of put a stay on his smuggler job and kept him away from Jabba for most of the time, but in The Empire Strikes Back, it really catches up to him, and he's kind of back in it after certain things happen. And that's something that actually had to be addressed because he was established as a smuggler and his actions in the past did have to come back to bite him in the ass, and that's just how it worked, and that's how he overcame everything. He had friends in the Resistance and he was in love with Leia, and those were his intrinsic motivations, and all of that stuff together helped him overcome his ways and his old ways and become a hero that the Resistance needed, and a good man. And that's really important for his character. Luke's intrinsic motivations were so important the entire original trilogy. He had friends in the Resistance whom he deeply cared about. He had family in the Resistance, but also in the Empire that he decided intrinsically to save. And he also desired justice because it was something that needed to happen in the galaxy. The Empire was destroying the galaxy, and he knew that. And because they had intrinsic motivation, the plot had a purpose. But because none of these characters in The Last Jedi had any intrinsic motivation, had anything really to do with the plot in general, the plot had no purpose, and it just happened around them. It did not affect these characters in any meaningful way that caused them to grow. So the plot has to help the characters have to cause the plot to happen, but the plot has to cause the characters to grow, none of which happened in The Last Jedi, but all of which happened in the original trilogy. Everything in The Empire Strikes Back supported the family reveal and each other. All of the things that happened because of what the characters did. So, the plot in the last... No, let's go into this first. No, let's do this. Yeah, let's go into this first. There are two things that I could talk about right now, and I've just decided right now which one I'm going to do first. So, there were certain things... No. Okay, I decided against what I was just going to do. I know, it took me a second. Sorry about that. So, the plot in The Last Jedi falls apart because the characters are supposed to initiate the plot progression, but none of the characters were in character, and stuff just arbitrarily happened to these characters. That's not how you write. Because like I said, the characters initiate the plot, and then the plot initiates change in the characters, and that's how you write. That's how this works, Ryan. But I guess you missed that when you were in film school. Good job, you hack. So now we're gonna briefly talk about... Sorry, I'm deciding. I'm deciding again. I know. I'm rather annoying in this area. So just give me a second to decide. So, there are things that happened in The Empire Strikes Back that aided the plot. And the whole situation on Cloud City aided the plot because it had Han's past come back to haunt him. It led to the reveal of Luke's father, his parentage, let's say that. It really aided the plot because it pushed... As much as it was bad and a failure for the characters, but by the way, these Han and Leia, I believe, went to Cloud City in order to ask Lando to help them fight against the Empire, and that was something that really needed to be done, and that they were betrayed is a very big thing, and actually helped Han really grow to be the hero he needed to be, because he tried to protect Leia from Darth Vader, and that was something really important. So the whole situation at Cloud City, the whole situation where, here, the basic chain of events in The Empire Strikes Back is this. Luke goes to train with Yoda. Yoda senses a lot of his father in him because he is impulsive. Okay, so then there's something going on which causes... I don't really remember because I haven't watched the originals in a while. Not super long, but like this The Last Jedi has wiped my memory of pretty much everything because it's that bad. So there's something going on in the Resistance where Han knows about Lando, and they decide to, and Han decides to take Leia to go see Lando because it's going to help their cause. And they go there, and when they're there, they're betrayed by Lando, and then Han is frozen in carbonite and sold back to Jabba in exchange for bounty, and then Luke and Darth Vader fight, and Vader tells Luke that I'm your father, and then Luke freaks out a little bit. Makes sense, because the most evil dude in the galaxy is your father. That's hard to hear. And then Vader, after seeing Luke basically jump off a cliff, pretty much. It wasn't a cliff, and I know that. He jumped down a shaft. He assumes that his son is dead, or he assumes that his son basically just up and yeeted out of there, because he's just like, I don't know how to deal with this information right now. So he goes force talks to Leia, and then Leia picks him up and they go away. Those are the basic whole thing about what's going on. Whole big issue is that the Empire is building another Death Star and needs to be stopped. So Cloud City in The Empire Strikes Back really aided the plot because it pushed forward the entire narrative that Luke was the son of Darth Vader, and it also helped Han to acknowledge the ghosts of his past, which is something that needed to happen in order for him to overcome his old smuggler ways, and it's really important that that happened. But Canto Bight, which is basically the objective ripoff of what Cloud City was supposed to be, handicapped the entire plot because it did not include the trio dynamic. It did not help to aid the trio dynamic's development. And there was no consequence to it happening because it was an utter failure and everything failed there. So, don't know why it was included, but whatever. The Han and Leia romance that happened in The Empire Strikes Back, it helped to show that good things come out of war, but the awkward forced romance between Finn and Rose handicapped the plot because it had no precedence, they had no chemistry, and it literally just made the Resistance more vulnerable, so I don't know why that was included. Luke being saved by Lando and Leia aided the plot, but Rose saving Finn handicapped the plot because it made the Resistance vulnerable. Whatever. Just going. Luke going to Vader and finding out the truth deepened the plot conflict and literally everything in the original trilogy exponentially and made perfect sense narratively and logically. But Rey going to Kylo Ren, whom she did not trust for shit, and finding out the truth literally slashed any plot potential at all. Because now they have no relationship. Now there's nothing between them. There is literally nothing that would make either of them care about each other. So I don't know why that's included, why that happened. Why are they not cousins or brother and sister? Or even why is she not a Kenobi at this point? Anything would have been better than a nobody, because at least it would have made sense. It would have made sense and would have deepened some kind of conflict. It's insane, though. Absolutely insane. But Skywalker or Solo is really the only thing that would make any difference in this plot. But being a nobody just handicaps the entire plot because there's nothing that can possibly happen from here at all. Luke being old and crotchety hindered the plot and Rey's potential for a hero's journey because she did not have time to honestly train in this movie, which was so necessary in the second third of a hero's story. They have to show growth, and she didn't. She just could do everything. Regardless of what Luke would have done or should have done, she could just do everything anyway. So it hindered the plot and Rey's potential for a hero's journey. And he was also out of character as hell, but that's another story. But Obi-Wan and Yoda being old and crotchety helped the plot, helped Luke to realize that the Jedi were fallible, and helped Luke to create his own hero's journey in branching off from the ways of the old Jedi, which is what should have happened but did not happen, according to Rian anyway. Not my canon. All right. So now we're coming down to the wire. We're coming down to the close of this video, but it's still going to be a few more minutes. Unfortunately, I know we're over an hour and a quarter in. I'm sorry, but this is what must be done because he doesn't know what he's doing. He does not know what he's doing. There are certain implied duties of a writer-director. I am a writer myself, so I know these duties. I know what you have to do. I know what's important to an audience because I'm a viewer. I know what's important to I know what's important to do when you're a writer. You have certain responsibilities and certain duties to the audience, to the characters, to the and to the movie itself, and even to the universe that the movie exists in. It is your job to fulfill these duties, and Rian did not. So what are these duties, you're asking? One of the implied duties of the writer-director is to be the characters when writing them so that they are in character and their motivations make sense. You are to be able to understand, you have to be these characters while you're writing them. You have to get into their mindset so you understand how they, not you, would respond to a situation that happened, how they would initiate something to happen. You have to understand their motivations, their emotions, why they do things. You have to understand who they are. But Rian did not, and he could not for any of these characters whatsoever. It is your job as a writer-director to develop convincing relationships between characters to keep the audience engaged. Now, one of the major things that I will be talking about in a future video, maybe even the video directly after this, I don't know what I'm going to do in this order at this point because these videos take a lot out of me to record. You have to, there is something so critically important to a Star Wars movie in general, the trio dynamic that existed in all the last two trilogies. That's so important. Between Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan, that was the trio in the prequel trilogy. And in the original trilogy, it was Luke, Leia, and Han. And they all had this beautiful dynamic that I will talk about in a future video and explain the difference between that and The Last Jedi. And it was Rian's job to have them all in the same room and, you know, develop some kind of working relationship. It was so important, especially in the second third of their whole arc, to have them work together, to establish some kind of rapport, but they did not. They weren't even in the same room together for the most part. And I hate to say it, Rose is not a part of this trio. She's not. It is your job as a writer to drop clues so that the audience can draw conclusions, logical conclusions based on what you showed them. Show not tell, guys. Show not tell. And it is your job. It is so much your job to encourage fans to speculate. Did you notice no one's speculating now? Did you? Because I did. It is again your duty to have a compelling plot that is meaningful to the world, to the characters, and to the audience. Because if the characters don't feel anything, and it doesn't make sense in their universe, then the audience is gonna feel nothing for the plot that you gave us. If the characters have no effect on the plot, and no matter what they do, they can't change anything that happens, we're not gonna feel anything because we know that we're defeated and we can't root for anyone, and that's sad. We shouldn't be doing that. As viewers, we should not feel defeated. And it is your job, your fucking job, to write a compelling plot that makes sense, which Rian couldn't do either. It is your responsibility to know your own limits and to not be so narcissistic to put the quality of the movie that you're writing at stake for your ego. Because I know for a fact, if I was writing a Star Wars movie, I am not the greatest strategician. I am not the greatest tactician. If I was writing, you know, the actual space scene where ships are firing at one another, I wouldn't be able to do it justice. I would request a co-writer to, you know, sit with me and write it and give me ideas, because yeah, visually I could probably do it really well, but honestly the tactical is not my strong suit, and I know that. So I would want someone to be there with me to make sure that what I'm saying and what I'm trying to do makes sense. And I don't want to be responsible for a crappy scene in a movie, because I know I could have done better by asking for someone, so I would. But Rian didn't ask for help on anything at all, and he clearly needed it. It is your job, it is your duty to listen to your actors when they say that something doesn't feel right. When Mark Hamill, John Boyega, and Daisy Ridley all approached Rian saying that their characters didn't feel right, or that something didn't jibe with what was going on, or something didn't make sense, he said no. He basically just shut them down and said, well, this is what we're doing. That's not how you do things, Rian. It's not how you do things. You have to listen to them, because they might, just think for a second, they might know better than you, especially Mark Hamill, who said that his character wasn't real and he's not canon Luke. He's been playing this character for 40 years. He might know something more than you. He might. Could have thought about that. Because I know if I was writing Star Wars and my actors came to me telling me that my script didn't feel right, or my character didn't feel or the character that they're playing didn't feel the same, I would do something to change it, because I know then I'm wrong and that I need to do something to rectify the situation. It is also your job, just thought, it is also your job to, you know, listen to what the audience might want. Because I know when Mark Hamill spoke to Rian one time and said, we have to think about what the audience wants. And Rian said that, no, we have to think about what we want. That was insulting, because no, that's not what you do. You're writing an installment into a franchise that is 40 years old, and it has always been inspired by the audience that it's viewing, that are in its viewings. It has always been inspired by that and changed. That's why they kind of removed Jar Jar Binks to the background in the second two movies, because he was really unliked by the audience. It's really important. Yeah, you can't sacrifice what everything you want because you don't think an audience would like it, but you have to be able to balance that, and that is your job. It is your job to have few, if any, plot holes that cannot be answered by a sequel. There are so many plot holes in this movie that we have discussed that it's insane. And you can't really write over those things or just, you know, move on from them because they are things that are just logical fallacies, deus ex machina, red herring, everything. All of these things that you are taught in grade school and in high school and especially in film classes not to write. And he just did it because, well, he could. Could we fix Rey's parentage? Absolutely. I hope they retcon it in the next movie. But I don't even know if I'm going to see the next movie because of how this movie, how The Last Jedi made me feel. And it is your ever-loving job, your duty, your responsibility as a writer-director to keep the audience invested in the universe, which is exactly contrary to what Rian did. Because no one is speculating anymore. Rian failed. Few care. Many are too depressed or angry. Many are so heartbroken they can't even speculate. And what is so critically important to audience turnout is speculation. That's why The Last Jedi made as much money as it did in its opening weekend. I know for a fact in October I bought pre-screening tickets because I wanted to see it. And I wanted to see how Rey and Kylo and Finn and Poe and Luke all interacted with one another, how it actually went down. I bought it because I was invested with what JJ left us with. There was so much potential and Rian just squashed it all. And the only speculation that I see going on right now in this fandom is how J.J. Abrams, who, you know, probably won't even be able to or will choose not to, he'll probably choose not to. How JJ is going to fix your fucking mess, Rian. That is the only speculation I see. We're trying to figure out ways that we could retcon Rey's parentage. And there are so many easy ins of that. Let me tell you, you left that one wide open, babe. And I know you didn't want to, but you did. And you should be proud of yourself that we might be able to fix that. Because you know it's wrong. You know she's not a nobody. You know it, dude. You left so many things open, except the things that actually mattered, aside from her parentage, of course. There is no speculation going on because there is nothing to answer. Nothing left to answer. Rey and Kylo have no relation. So what is their dynamic? Nothing. They have no dynamic. Poe, Finn, and Rey have no trio dynamic. Han, Leia, and Luke are all dead. Yeah, Luke can come back as a Force ghost, and that's wonderful and everything, and maybe he can train Rey from beyond the grave, and that's fine and everything. But you destroyed any plot there could have been. You destroyed the entire narrative by doing nothing the right way, by doing nothing in any way. You know for a fact, and you actually said it yourself, Rian. You said it yourself. You wrote yourself into a corner. And not only did you write yourself into the corner, you wrote yourself and JJ into a corner. And I'm pretty sure Kathleen Kennedy knows that, and I know that she's stroking your ass right now for doing it. But, you know, we know that you wrote yourself into a corner, and you know it too. And you know what? I don't even have any faith for 9 anymore because there's nothing really JJ could do to save this franchise. It's dead. It's dead. Congratulations. You claim yourself a fan. Be proud. You destroyed the franchise. And you want to know what's really funny? I just thought about it right now. You know how there was no time jump at the beginning of, you know how there was no time jump where there usually is? And you know it's usually not an issue? Like, I actually heard that there was going to be no time jump, and I'm like, wow, that's actually really cool. They've never done that before. We know that the reason there was no time jump was because fans wanted to see Luke Skywalker take that lightsaber, but Rian doesn't care about what we want anyway. So why was there no time jump? It actually would have aided his plot. It would have made the Resistance and the First Order, their power struggle actually make sense a little bit better. Although the Resistance would have to be more powerful because they would have had time to regroup. So it would have actually aided the plot in a lot of ways. So why was there no time jump? We know Rian Johnson doesn't care about what the audience wants because he told Mark Hamill that we have to think about what we want, not what the audience wants. So I don't know why there was no time jump when it actually would have aided his plot. He's a freaking idiot. Kylo would have actually been able to, complete his training. The technology development would have made sense. A lot of stuff would have made sense, but it just wasn't. And you want to know what's crazy? And this is what's really crazy. This video now is almost an hour and a half long. I can't believe I've been able to talk this long for this. I cannot believe it. It's actually insane. But I was able to talk for over an hour, almost an hour and a half, probably over an hour and a half by the time this video was done. I was able to talk for over an hour and a half about how the plot construction was bad, how the characters were completely out of character, how Rian Johnson fundamentally misunderstands basic writing principles. I was able to talk for over an hour and a half about that. What does that tell you? That I'm right. Because think about it logically for just one moment. If someone is able to talk, give a brief dissertation give a rather lengthy dissertation backed up by the things they said, the things they did, the things that didn't make sense, everything else in this freaking movie. If someone is able to give you a thorough dissertation, a thorough explanation about how Rian Johnson doesn't know how to write, that means they're right. Or they at least have some basis to their opinion, but likely that they're right. Because everything I said was the truth. I'm not saying that because I want to look right or I want to look smarter than him, even though I probably am at this point. I'm trying to get this through to you that what happened in this movie should not have happened based on who the characters are and how the plot should have gone and the prior canon and everything else. Rian Johnson ignored everything established for him and everything set out for him. And the thing is, I am not using fake evidence or convenient facts here. I am using his own words and his own material and everything else against him because he left it wildly open to criticism because he can't write. And I'm talking over an hour and a half about this because I am right. I am not wrong here. You cannot say I'm objectively wrong, and I'm not trying to sound cocky because I am never cocky. I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm not the smartest person in the universe. I know I'm not perfect. But I'm right on this because I know how to write. I've been told since the time I was in 3rd grade that I know how to write. I took screenwriting classes. I took art classes. I took communications classes. I took business classes. I know how things work. I know how you're supposed to write. I know how the business works. My degree is in entertainment business, okay? I know how things work. And I don't want to use my academic credentials to prove myself. I don't want to use anything to prove myself. But I need to show you that there are people out there who are smart. And I'm not the only person saying these things. There are countless blogs and countless YouTubers saying the exact same thing I am because we all see the same things. And the thing is, our opinions, our viewpoints don't change wildly because we're all in agreement on what happened and we're not just a think tank. We're all talking about the same thing, but you guys keep shutting us down. You apologists keep shutting us down because you like this movie and you want to justify this movie because you like it. And you can and here's the thing, you can like the characterization as much as you want. You can like the movie as much as you want, but it does not change the fact it is objectively wrong for the narrative. It is objectively wrong based on characterization. And I am able to talk about this for over an hour because I'm right. Believe me, I don't want to hate this movie. I bought tickets in October so I could see the pre-screening showing. I bought tickets because I wanted to love this movie. I saw it a 2nd and 3rd time because I wanted to like this movie so badly. I wanted to like it so badly that I forced myself to go through like 5 more hours of torture trying to justify this movie to myself, but you guys keep trying to justify this movie to me, and I can't honestly accept anything you say anymore, because this movie was written so badly based on everything that Rian Johnson portrayed to us in this movie. It was written horribly. It was done badly. It was bad from its inception to its very execution. And just everything was so horrible. The characters, the writing, the plot that might have existed. Everything was just so bad. And you cannot, in your right mind, try to justify this movie to me anymore, because it was objectively shit. And with that, I'm gonna drop the mic.